Welcome to EFT Breakthroughs. I'm Nancy Linruth, and today I'm going to be talking about what this EFT thing is, what this tapping is that I use with clients. Because I've been hearing from listeners who don't know much about it and they want to know a little bit more. So I'll tell you what it is, where it's being used, what it's being used for, and a little bit about the science behind it, and then I'll show you the tapping points. So let's do this. Actually, women business owners, most of the ones I work with, have actually heard of tapping before they come to me. It's becoming well known in certain circles as a tool to clear mindset issues that get in the way of having the kind of results, taking the actions you want to in your business. So many women business owners have learned how to do it on their own. They've learned the tapping points from, say, a YouTube video or someone's taught them, and they use it just day-to-day stuff. Some have actually used tapping working with another practitioner in the past, and then they come to me because they want to work on some real focused attention on specific issues. And they'll come to me particularly if they don't know for sure why they're having that issue, but they know there must be something going on in their subconscious, because that's my specialty. I have spent years and years uncovering subconscious rules and fears and beliefs that hold women back in their businesses. And using the tapping, we release them so that then they can go up to the next level and really go where they want to with their businesses. So, talking about tapping. Tapping is a technique that is used all over the world by therapists. That's where I learned it when I was a therapist. It's used by doctors, by nurses, by coaches of all stripes, and other folks, other professions use it. Also, individuals are finding it and using it for themselves. Maybe they've learned the tapping points from a YouTube video, or somebody taught them how to use it, and they're using it basically every day to help them perform better, to relax, to whatever they need it for. It is used for all sorts of things. Stress relief is a huge one. But as I say, I learned it in the mental health world. There it's being used for all sorts of issues, particularly around anxiety, so post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD, or phobias or generalized anxiety disorder. Lots of anxiety this helps with, but it's also being used for things like depression and hoarding and grief, a lot of issues that end up in a therapy room. Tapping is often used for processing and releasing emotions. So that can be some things that are going on currently. Like I've had clients come to me sometimes who say, right now in my business, I'm not making as much money as I wanted to. I'm really getting upset about it. So we tap and we can release that upset, the frustration, the fear, whatever the feeling is that they're having right now. And that can allow them to think better and perform better. It's also used to release the emotions that might be trapped from an old memory. So you can see in PTSD, that's often the main work that's done, is to release all the emotions that sort of got stuck inside and are getting in the way now. So tapping is great for that, for old memories. It's being used in schools. Yes, for things like test anxiety, but also for behavior. I mean, I've heard of teachers in elementary schools using it at the beginning of the day with their class, so the kids can settle down and be really ready to learn. It's used for pain, for insomnia, for cravings and weight loss, for performance of all kinds, from sports to speaking to music. I use it with clients for speaking issues, but I use it for all sorts of business blocks. It's being used for that. And again, this is basically just the tip of the iceberg. Tapping is used for so much. Now, I've been saying the word tapping, but tapping comes in some different flavors here. The type that I learned and use primarily is called EFT, which stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques. And if you're in the know, you know that is in fact plural, emotional freedom techniques. Most people just say technique, but when it was named, it was plural. So the EFT is how it's referred to usually. EFT is a descendant, I guess, of something called TFT, or thought field therapy. And that was the as I understand it, that was the first time that acupressure was brought in to something beyond just physical stuff, so more emotional things, by a guy named Dr. Roger Callahan. This was in the 70s or 80s, something like that. Anyway, so he developed TFT. TFT does some different types of routines where you tap in different ways for different issues, depending on the person, depending on the issue. So that's TFT. EFT came along, and that was a fellow named Gary Craig. He learned TFT, and then he systematized it, made it much more simple, and called it EFT, and really spread it really around the world. There are some other types of tapping that use these acupressure points that I'm not going to go into here, but those are the two main ones, TFT and EFT, and those are the ones that mostly have had the science done on them. So it's tapping on acupressure points, right? Acupressure points being the same points as are used in acupuncture, but there's a lot fewer of them. I think there's maybe 17 at most that we use in tapping. In acupuncture, I understand that there's over 2,000 that can be used. And with tapping, you don't use needles. It's just your fingertips, right? And you're tapping on your own points. Rarely would you go see somebody else to have them tap on you. You tap on yourself, even if you're being guided, like my clients are guided by me, they're following me, but they're tapping on their own acupoints. So I keep hinting at science. There's been a fair amount of science that's been done over the last couple of decades. And these science studies really support that tapping is very effective. It gives you rapid results, and those results are long-lasting. It's not like you have to do it every time so that you're not afraid of snakes that day, for example. If you can get to the heart of the problem and release it, it doesn't come back unless you have another event that causes you to develop a phobia of snakes, for example, or to develop a block, like I work on with my clients. It has some different biological effects. It lowers cortisol levels very quickly, and that study has been repeated several times. And actually, the second or third time that they repeated it, the results were even bigger than the first few times. It lowers it dramatically, and it lowers those cortisol levels very quickly. Cortisol is the stress hormone. That's why stress is an obvious use of tapping. It downregulates the amygdala. The amygdala is the mid-part of your brain that is involved in the fight, flight, or freeze response and other emotional reactions. And so it almost immediately downregulates the amygdala from being on alert, and then it calms down very quickly with tapping. You can see these changes in the brain. They've done some studies with MRI machines, which is interesting because you couldn't be tapping in an MRI machine because you're supposed to be still. So I think what must happen is, and I've read this, I just don't remember. I think you go in the MRI machine, you think about the thing that caused you issues, and it's mapped in the machine. Then you come out, you tap, and you go back in and you think about the thing again, and it's calmed down. It's really quite amazing the changes that you can see from the testing that's done. And another thing it does is it changes genetic expression. So your genes don't change. You got your genes, they're just your genes. But what changes is which genes are turned on and which are turned off. And this is the field of epigenetics, and they've done some research with tapping with that, and it really changes how the genes are showing up, which are at play and which have calmed down and stepped back. So that's a cool thing that science has been demonstrating with tapping. All right. I don't do a lot of that sort of tapping. To get rid of an underlying block, which is what I do, and what you see me doing here on EFT Breakthroughs, it usually takes some targeted tapping. So it's not just the hitting the acupressure points. First of all, you have to identify a block or multiple blocks that are getting in the way of what it is you want. Sometimes the block is obvious. I mean, if you've been watching, you might have noticed sometimes where the person will say exactly what the block is, and I'll just repeat their words back to them and I'll go, oh, that's it. That's the one. So sometimes it can be obvious. Sometimes they know it coming in. The problem is that I'm telling myself I don't deserve this. Okay, we'll test that and we'll go with that one. Sometimes though, you have to do some digging, like I do with guests here. As I said, sometimes they'll say the words, and when I repeat them back, they don't remember that they said them, because it's just not a conscious thing to them that's the issue in their subconscious. Sometimes, though, they're saying the issue is this, and I'll go over here and say, well, try this one. I'm not making a lot of money I'm not being visible, because if I were more visible, I would be too successful. That might not be logical or rational. They might not have thought of that, but that could be the block. So identifying whatever it is that's at play is the first step, and then you go in there to release it with the tapping. Now, there's a lot of different approaches to using tapping to release the blocks. I mentioned the difference between TFT and EFT, but even within EFT, there's a number of different ways you can use it. And if you've been watching, you've seen me call up a younger version of the person to tap on the issue they had, or to do some back and forth tapping, very simple tapping where we say, yes, it is, no, it's not. That can bring things down too. And then a lot of different ways of tapping and what you focus on with the tapping. But how do you tap? Okay, well, when you're watching these episodes, you can just tap with me, do what I'm doing. But I'll show you points here so that you're a little more ready for it. You can tap with two fingers of either hand. I use the index and middle finger usually on my right hand because I'm right-handed, but sometimes I get bored and I switch, and that's fine. It doesn't matter which side you're using. So you use those two fingers, and let me try to explain it for those who are listening instead of watching it. You can go to YouTube and see me doing this, but you can also pay attention. Here, you'll get it. So with those two fingers on my right hand, on my left hand, under my little finger, not my thumb, but under my little finger, between the knuckle and the wrist, there's that fleshy part on the side of your hand. That's where you want to tap. And you're tapping on all of these points about as hard as if you were drumming your fingertips on a tabletop. So you're not kind of whiffing it. But you also don't want to hurt yourself. Don't leave a bruise, okay? Don't really hit hard. Just tap solidly, okay? For all the points. So that's the first point. The next point is where one of your eyebrows starts. And yes, you can tap on the same side as the hand you're using. You can cross the midline. Sometimes people want to use both hands. They feel it's more balanced. On occasion, I'll actually have people cross their arms and tap on these points because that isn't necessary usually, but sometimes it seems to help if there's a really kind of convoluted or old stuck belief in there. Okay, so you tap where one of your eyebrows starts, or both of them. The next spot is right on the side of your eye, the eye socket, basically. Don't hit yourself in the eye, just on that ridge of bone there. The next spot's about an inch below your pupil, right on your cheek there. The next one is between your nose and your lip. If you're using two fingers, you're gonna have it covered. But even if you kind of miss it, this is a very forgiving thing. You're gonna send some of those vibrations to this point. So don't get too hung up on getting it exactly right. So after the under the nose spot, there is the spot on your chin, which is right under your lip. So you're not kind of making a Kirk Douglas indent there. You're going right under your lip. Okay? How many times do you tap? Well, when I was learning, they said, well, do between 5 and 9 taps per point. Yeah, that's fine. Pretty soon you're going to get really comfortable with it and just tap as long as you feel like it. Occasionally there'll be a point that really feels good and you want to tap longer on it. That's great. Keep tapping. That's a good sign that that's what you should be doing. Or if one of these points hurts, skip it. There's no need to tap on something that's painful, okay? You'll get enough from at least 4 points if you tap on at least 4 points, okay? So after the chin point, we're going to the collarbone point. You could find there's 2 of them between, okay, if you find that U-shaped bone right at the base of your neck. I'm going to hit my microphone here with it. Okay, right at that U-shaped bone, you go to the 2 points on that, go down about an inch, out about an inch, and that's where that collarbone spot is, both of them. Now, that can be kind of hard to find when you're in the middle of it. I usually just make a fist with a flat part of my knuckle. I go where a man would knot his tie, and which I'm not doing now because that would be deafening with the microphone. But you go ahead and tap on that point. Okay. The next spot, if you take all 4 fingers, you go out 4 inches down from your armpit, and you tap there on your side. That's the underarm spot. It's kind of silly looking, but I'm on YouTube doing this. A lot of people do it. It's okay. You'd be part of the in crowd. Tap under your arm. Okay, last spot. Take all 5 fingers, very top of your head. You can tap there. You can make little circles. Some people like to do that. And I like to end on this spot because it tends to be very relaxing. If you've ever done break an egg or have gotten one of those sort of whisk-like metal things that you go on the top of your head to relax, it's very relaxing. So it's a good one to end with. My understanding is that these energy meridians, there's a number of them that all come up at the top of your head and they cross over there. So when you're tapping there, you're hitting a lot of these energy meridians. Energy meridians are these lines of energy that run through the body. It's not just points. All of these acupoints that we're dealing with are where one of these lines comes up near the surface of your body. But the lines run throughout your body. So it used to be that Western science went, ha ha, isn't that funny? And then there'd be these ancient 4,000-year-old paintings of these meridians in China or something. But actually, a few years back, Western science invented a machine that could measure that, the energy that's kind of being emitted from these lines, and you can trace the lines using this little machine. It's kind of cool. I think they invented it in South Korea. Anyway, so these energy meridians, they come up near the surface. That's where we're tapping on these points where they come up near the surface. Actually, there was a study done early days that claimed that it was saying that tapping doesn't work because they had some people tapping with the actual tapping points that we teach, and some people were tapping on what they claimed were sham points in the arm, I think they were. Well, there's a bunch of energy meridians that run through your arm. So the sham points actually were tapping points. So when they got good results for both the tapping and the sham tapping points, it's because it was all tapping. Anyway, if you use the points that I show you here, that should be enough. Now, I just showed you all these tapping points. If you watch the EFT Breakthroughs with me, with guests, you just tap along with us. And you don't have to memorize them, but as you do them, you'll get to know them. It's pretty comfortable and it's pretty easy to remember them over time. And here's a neat thing. You can use these tapping points without any words on your own, and it will lower stress. You could use tapping all the time without words. The reason for the words is to have you focus on the thing you want the tapping to work on. And that's why I'm using words, and there's ways to use it that make it more effective. But just simply tapping can lower your stress, and that's great. We could all use a little less stress, I think, these days. You can also use tapping like that to lower your resistance to taking action. In fact, I have a free procrastination breakthrough kit that you can use whenever you feel resistance to taking any type of action. And in that kit, it shows you what I just showed you, the tapping points, how to tap. And then there's a video that you can tap along with that is to release stress. It uses words, you don't really need it, but it can help you be more a little focused on the stress. So there's that video to tap down the stress. And that's useful because stress will often get in the way of thinking. It sort of starts shutting down the higher thinking parts of your brain. So if you want to take action, if you want to think of your way out of a problem, being stressed is going to make it a lot harder. So tapping can open up those parts of your brain. You'll have better ways of thinking of things. You're more likely to be able to take the actions you want. Okay, if you've been so stressed that you don't want to take action because every time you think about taking the action, you get stressed out more, that's a great thing to do, is to lower that stress. So that's the first tap along video in the procrastination breakthrough kit. The second one is a video that you can use anytime that you feel resistance to doing something, and it will focus that part of your mind. You tap along with me in the video saying, I don't want to do this thing. I don't feel like it. It's no good. It's no fun, whatever I'm saying in the video. And you can either just use the words I'm using, or you can make them more specific to what you're going through, what you're resisting taking action on, so that it becomes easier to take that action. So that's not going at the reason to procrastinate, but it is lowering your resistance to the action in the moment. So yeah, use that video anytime you feel that resistance to taking action. So if you want the procrastination breakthrough kit, go grab it now at unblockresults.com/results. That's my goodies page where I've got freebies, and you can download that and use it anytime you want. And I'll see you next week with another actual tapping session with another amazing woman business owner. Until then, happy tapping.